Welcome back, and this is part 2 of how to overcome overthinking. Now in part 1, we talked about the 3 types of overthinking based on past, present and future. And in this video, we're going to talk about the mindset and the technique to overcome all these 3 different types of overthinking. Let's start with future overthinking, or what we also called worrying or future tripping. Future tripping in your head can sound like excessive worrying about all the different things that could go wrong, excessive planning for the future, and simply being afraid of the unknown. Now, the mindset that you need to adopt when it comes to future overthinking is that you need to zoom out. So, for example, if you're worrying about a job interview, that there's a lot at stake. If there's a job interview that you're afraid of and you're thinking, what if something goes wrong? What if I don't make it in this job interview? You need to zoom out for a second and picture yourself 5 years down the line. Close your eyes for a second and think about now you're 5 years into the future and you've already landed and you're already working a really good job. And that interview was just one of the many other interviews that you gave. It was one of the 20 other interviews that you gave. You did face some problems in that interview, but you handled them well. You handled them well and you went ahead and gave a few more and you finally landed the job that was meant for you. And now here you are 5 years down the line, enjoying the benefits of the job that you're meant to be in and enjoying a life that is meant for you. Now, this technique is what we called temporal distancing, where you use your ability to look into the future to your advantage. You use that ability to look into the future to actually think about and picture the future. Here, what you're doing is you're creating a little bit of distance from the immediate urgency, the immediacy or the urgency that you're feeling about this situation. It gives you more perspective and it helps you calm down. Now, the technique that I want you to use when you're overthinking about the future is the fear setting exercise. Now, if you have paper or pen around you, as always, pick it up. Now, write down fear setting on top of the page and start by defining your worst fear. What is the worst case scenario that you're so afraid of? That you're so afraid that it might come true? Define it. Now, the second step of the exercise is making a prevention plan. Prevent it. How do I prevent this fear from coming true? How do I prevent this worry from coming true? How do I prevent the worst case scenario from coming true? And the third and the most effective part of this exercise is the repair plan. How am I going to repair, or how am I going to repair the situation if my worst case scenario does come true? How am I going to pull myself out of this situation? It is almost like making a contingency plan. Just knowing that no matter what happens, you're gonna be fine. Having the confidence to go in and risk, because no risk, no story. Oftentimes, because of the fear of our worst case scenario coming true, we often end up not taking any risks and actually avoiding the possibilities that life has to offer. So what this fear setting exercise does is make you feel prepared and confident to take risks. Now, the first time that I ever came across this exercise is in a TED Talk by Tim Ferriss, and it's changed my life ever since then and also my clients' lives. If you find yourself in the category of present overthinking, or what we also call the overanalysis or the analysis paralysis. Now, when you're overthinking based on the present, you are actually trying to dive too deep into one particular topic. And you're trying to look at it from 50,000 different angles, trying to make sense of it. You're trying to ask for too many opinions, too many advices, hoping and wishing that it would solve some of your problems and bring you relief, or maybe just give you an answer. Now, I'm going to tell you a mindset and a technique that will help you solve this problem on your own without needing any external help. Let's talk about mindset. Occam's razor. Now, Occam's razor is essentially a problem-solving technique. What this says is that when a negative emotion comes up for you, instead of jumping to the worst possible scenario, look at the simplest possible explanation first. For example, if you remember in the first video in part 1, we talked about a car breaking down in the middle of the road. right? Bring that car back. Now, when your car breaks down in the middle of the road, you first look at the tires, the simplest possible explanation of why your car broke down. You look at the tires and okay, if there's nothing wrong with the tires, you then move on to the next possible explanation, which is probably something is wrong with the battery. Now you go on to the next possible explanation. When you look at the battery, if that's where you find the problem, that is exactly where you're going to try and fix the problem. Because Occam's razor, by employing Occam's razor, what it means is oftentimes when we're overthinking, we tend to jump to the worst possible and the most catastrophic explanation, which is something that adds fuel to your overthinking and which is what paralyzes you into inaction. Whenever the next time, now Occam's razor in action is going to look like this. The next time a negative thought comes up for you, look for evidence. Treat the simplest possible explanation like a hypothesis. It could be true, it could be false. I'm going to look for the evidence. For example, let's say you texted your friend and your friend didn't text back. Now, if you and your friend have not been on good terms, probably what you're going to think about is, does my friend hate me? Did I do something? Did I say something to offend her? But Occam's razor in action here would look like when you ask yourself, you stop yourself, you catch yourself, when you tend to start ruminating or when you tend to start overthinking about why your friend didn't text back, you stop, you pause for a second. You look for the simplest possible explanation. Just maybe she's busy. Now, if I'm catastrophizing the whole act of her not getting back to me, I'm going to start thinking, is there something wrong with our relationship? That is catastrophizing that simple little event. What's the evidence there's something wrong with the relationship? Probably nothing. It could simply be that she's busy. Now, that is your simplest possible explanation. Now, if based on the evidence, your simplest possible explanation comes out to be true, great, you don't need to think any further. But in case if it turns out to be false, then you move on to the next, a little bit more complex explanation. Now, the technique that you use to overcome present-based overthinking or over-analysis is the good enough list. Whenever you find yourself overthinking based on a present situation or based on a current scenario, make the good enough list. Make a list of the few factors that are good enough for you to jump into action. So let's say I'm a corporate professional who's been meaning to start creating content. I'm also somebody who's passionate about videography, but I've been overthinking creating content for a long time. Now, this is what my good enough list could look like. My good enough list will have, I need to make sure that my video is shot with the back camera of my phone at 4K 30 FPS. The second criteria that I could have is it needs to be recorded on a good microphone and the audio needs to be crystal clear. Or the third bullet point in my list, or the third criteria in my list could be that my video needs to solve a problem for other videographers. Now, once these three boxes are checked in my good enough list, I just close my eyes and press post. And that's it. That's what we do when we're overthinking about a present situation. What the good enough list does is that it gives you a specific set of criteria that needs to be fulfilled right before you jump into action. It reduces your uncertainty and makes you feel more confident about jumping into action. The last and my favorite type of overthinking is the overthinking based on past, which we also call rumination or brooding. Rumination or brooding or past overthinking in your head can look like a lot of regret. Excessively replaying scenarios in your head. Why did I do that? I shouldn't have done it. I should have done it a different way. Or simply overthinking based on action, which is overthinking based on what you did do, and overthinking based on inaction, or regret based on inaction or what you didn't do. And the mindset that you need to adopt in the past overthinking is to understand that regret is useless. Regret is one of the most futile emotions that we as human beings can feel. Of course, you use regret to reevaluate the things that you did wrong and what you're not going to do in the future, but that's about it. But often we tend to unpack and dwell in that regret, which ends up wasting a lot of your valuable time and energy and resources that you could be putting into other useful and productive activities and planning for a good future. Now, how can you look at regret differently? Regret At the core of it is me beating myself up for doing things a certain way. I wish I did it differently. But the past is destiny and the future is free will. Regret based on your past actions is assuming that you would have taken a different step. But the point is, you wouldn't have done anything differently. You're even questioning a past decision right now, sitting in this current moment, because you've lived a lot of life and experiences since then to now. And those experiences have given you a certain level of understanding, an increased level of understanding and wisdom about life, which has resulted in you even questioning something that you did in the past. The core idea being that you wouldn't have done anything differently. So you can stop wasting your precious energy hoping and wishing that you did something different, and actually use that energy to plan your future. The last and the final technique to overcome overthinking based on the past, which is one of the most painful types of overthinking, is a writing exercise. I'm going to give you 5 prompts that you need to answer. By the way, take a pen and paper as we always do, and I'm going to use some flashcards for this because I need it. Now, I want you to answer these 5 questions for yourself. So the first question that I want you to answer is, what are the 2 ways that this constant regret affects what I do and what I say on a day-to-day basis? What this question does is make you think about the ways that a past decision is still taking away from your present. That a past decision or something that you did in the past, how is it still affecting your present and robbing you of opportunities that you could be using in the present to build a brighter future? The second question I want you to ask yourself, could I have behaved any differently, considering the particular stage in my life and the information or experiences I had until that point in my life? What this question does is help you think and make you kind of realize that you had a certain set of information at that point in life. You had limited information available to you, and based on that information, based on that understanding, is how you acted, is how you behaved. Hopefully this gives you more perspective and you stop beating yourself up so much about it. The third question that I want you to ask yourself is, was there anything I did right in that situation that I'm also unnecessarily regretting so much? And I'm 100% sure that you're going to answer this in the positive, because what happens is, in our automatic thinking process, we tend to have a very black and white, very binary thinking, where everything is either too bad or it's never going to get better again. I did everything wrong. And these are cognitive biases that we have. By the way, I've talked about cognitive biases in another video. And if you haven't watched that video yet, I'm going to link it here and you can take a look at that video. You can watch that video. The fourth question that you need to ask yourself is, as a result of this regretful experience, have I changed the way I behave and respond to similar situations? Oftentimes what happens is, when I do something wrong, if I really sit and evaluate it, if I really sit and re-evaluate my actions, I also take stock of what I've learned from that experience and how am I applying it to my current life. Now, the last and the final question that I want you to ask yourself in this writing exercise, is there anything that I can do now that will make any difference about how I think and feel about this situation that I regret? Now, this question will help you zoom out a little bit and actually realize the amount of time that has been wasted, that has gone by, and hopefully bring you back to the present and take stock or take control of the time that you have in hand. Now, at the end of this exercise, you need to remember that you are actually better off because of the exact same experiences that you regret. So the solution to not experiencing regret is not to be perfect, but rather to realize that it is pretty impossible for a human being to not make some mistakes and not to experience some regret in this lifetime. I really hope that this video gave you the solutions to your overthinking problems. I really hope that this video helped you overcome your overthinking. And if there are any other questions, please feel to drop them down in the comment box, or you can DM me or email me. You know where to find me, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.